I got to think that, man, if we had if that officer was exposed to a wellness program, could they have been a better version of themselves and maybe made a better call?
Hi, welcome to TLC Connections podcast. My name's Julie Knudsen. I'm the Director of Development here, and I'll be your host. Today, we have Chief James Cadden here with us, and he has spent decades in law enforcement, rising through the ranks from investigator to chief in East Lansdowne Police Department, a small but complex Delaware County department. Chief Cadden leads a department committed to community safety, transparency, and innovation in policing. I'm excited to talk with him today about leadership policing in a small borough, what it means to serve a close-knit community, and how he has seen policing evolve from hands-on relationship-driven work to a field increasingly shaped by technology, regional collaboration, and heightened public expectations. And I just want to add for anybody that's listening that we reference CISM throughout our conversation, which is the Critical Incident Stress Management debriefing team that has been around for a while, but every department, county, state uses it differently. Typically, there's peer support involved and a mental health professional. So I've been fortunate to have gone through the training virtually and in person, still trying to learn myself and become more culturally competent. So Chief, thank you so much for joining us today. If it's okay, I really want to jump right in because talking about officer wellness, and the changes that you've seen in policing, when you had that horrible critical incident in 2024.
Yes.
You can speak to the specifics or not, but I'm curious how you responded in 2024, what that might have looked like in the beginning of your career. Is there a CISM team in Delco, and what kind of support was provided for officers? Because this is so new, I think, in general. I'm certainly newer in this space and learning about embedding clinicians for officers and co-responders and blending mental health support for officers for the community.
Sure.
Did that exist, 30 years ago when your career started? Was there critical incident debriefing?
Sure. Yeah. So if we did have debriefing, it would have been more tactical or operational. In this incident, 2024, we had CISM come in, which was invaluable, just allowing the officers to speak, and just that process alone. They're just phenomenal. The CISM was some great people, and I could not criticize in any way the response as far as wellness and mental health. After that incident, it was immediate. They were right there with us. And it was collective for all the agencies, but then we broke off also by agency or by anyone that wanted to talk. There may be officers still talking to them now. I don't know. It can be very private if needs be.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of amazing to hear that from a chief, from command staff, of officers getting well and you don't need to know as long as they're getting the support that they need.
As far as 37 years ago, if they existed, I was fully unaware of them. There was a different culture, different mindset, sharing your emotions too much. That was considered weakness, and at the time in our profession, weakness got called. You could have your gun taken from you if you expressed too many emotions that weren't consistent with stability,
So what changed? Because that does make an officer quite vulnerable.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I started at 19. I was young.
Yeah.
Obviously, like every 19-year-old, invincible. Nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. You're okay. Everything's fine. But I think, as with anything, over time, sure, yeah, the need was always there, and I think advancing the ways to develop it and respond to it effectively through what's now being referred to as officer wellness, or wellness in general. Usually, my earliest recollections were clinical psychiatrists, things like that, after incidents. But right now, CISM was just unbelievable for us during that incident.
Yeah, because my understanding, like officers, their suitability evaluations, it's upon hire, have to have that. Even in your department, are there any mandatory wellness checks? Now there's the Officer Accountability Act, I think, in some states, or how does it work in Delco or your department?
Sure, yeah. So our department, it's a little bit of a late bloomer, but we are currently going through the PLEAC accreditation process. So and part of that requires a wellness policy, and that's currently in place. Yeah, and so there are evaluations of officers, not only their performance ability and their job functions, but their mental status, their well-being, and obviously any indications or signs of concern are passed off to those who have that ability to assess and possibly offer resources.
So is this newer then for your department under the accreditation?
Very new.
Very new.
Never
Okay.
existed
Yeah.
before now.
Oh, okay. Wow. So Chief, you referenced, kind of back in the day, if an officer shared that they were struggling emotionally, there was concern about, losing their gun, their fitness for duty. What, if anything, has changed now if an officer were to come forward?
Sure. Yeah. So, and I guess that probably needs to be placed in a context. I do know that the difference now with our wellness program and our performance and officer wellness evaluations is that, and that's the whole idea, is that at the earliest sign of any type of trouble, which could include things that don't even involve on duty, just in your personal life, financial recklessness or very poor decisions being made. That there's an opportunity to bring the officer in and have a discussion, all with the goal of bettering them and strengthening them, not to pry into their lives or anything. But there's so many points, and there's a policy now, again, that's PLEAC accreditation approved, and so many on-ramps for the officer to reach out for help, and then have that help actually there, and also too for the leadership, the supervision at the very front line, even just to see the early warning signs, and not only through interactions, but feedback from residents and citizens, and review of body cam footage, and I think just the mindset change, honestly, to that, hey, this is not superstition anymore. This is not, you're weak, man up, or rub some dirt on it, or whatever saying you want to insert. That ideology is gone.
Yeah, it must really. I just so curious for how you even, your career seeing such changes. You're saying you went in as a 19-year-old. Have you been with East Lansdowne the whole time? Yeah,
so I actually worked for the County of Delaware for a period of time in a full-time capacity. And right about the time I started there, I started in a part-time capacity. I don't know how far your audience goes, but in some states that concept is a bit foreign to them. But in Pennsylvania, we love it. We hold on to it. We endear it. It's you work as a part-time officer, until there's an opening for full-time, either in your agency or another. And I had maintained part-time there for a while. And when a full-time opening spot came, I left the county and transitioned. So it's been about 37, and I don't regret a minute of it. It was absolutely wonderful.
You're what, 1 square mile, you told me? Or?
Less than that. Yeah, less than a square mile. Yeah. It's about
3,700
residents that we know of. Just that's Mary lives there. That's John. That's Malik. And not every house by any means, not every officer, but that's community. We're part of the community. The community is part of us.
So it sounds like there's a good relationship. Some communities don't trust the police, or
we have a great community relationship. And I think probably the thing that most people find stark when they start interacting with our residents is that the other side to that is that the residents can pull their blinds to the side and see that officer walking down the middle of the street and say, "Oh yeah, that's Jimmy, that's John," or I don't know his name, but I know his face.
And it's positive. It's a positive connection.
Yeah, they know us and we know them, and they know why we're there, and we never miss an opportunity to serve them, support them, and let them know that we're there for them. So, like I said, I'm sure there's merit to community relations, especially with big cities.
Right.
You can totally understand. I don't by any means disrespect or criticize them, but the mere concept for us is almost silly.
So the incident in 2024 was much more of an outlier. That has not.
Sure,
was in a home there.
So we had an officer shot, and a very brave officer, and the neighboring jurisdiction had an officer shot as well. That was investigated thoroughly by the district attorney's office, the Office of Criminal Investigations, and we don't know that there was ever a definitive reason behind it, other than that it was a family dispute. The shooter and a 12-year-old girl in the house, and we believe she was the first to be taken away. So and then he proceeded to execute his entire family. The grandparents of the family were the only ones that escaped because they were outside early morning doing, I think, gardening in the back of the house. And they heard the shots and called, but they didn't speak a word of English. So there was some bit of a delay. We actually didn't even know where it wasn't a trouble house to us. Even in a small town.
That's what was interesting. You said the homes
know all
like
the
that.
Homes.
Yeah, right.
That one was completely unknown to us for anything bad. And then the numbering system wasn't exactly consistent either. So when the officers pulled up, they pulled up pretty much right in front of the house. By that time, he had slaughtered his whole family, and he was just waiting for us.
Yeah.
And he had his way with us. He kicked us right in the teeth.
And it's interesting, as a chief, that you showed up. Were you the acting chief at the time, or?
No, so at the time I was a detective sergeant. I was in plain clothes, and I had pulled up, and the initial officer was to get shot was right in front of me, off to the left a little bit, standing next to a van, and broad daylight. It was beautiful weather like today, and it's an old Victorian house, I believe. Gorgeous house, but ultimately, in the end, he, I think once he started to see the presence, the SWAT team, we had extracted our people. Can't help people if you're laying on the ground bleeding all over the place. So we got to get our guys out so we can then go service. And as soon as, or probably even prior to it, right as the second officer was being taken out and the other ones were being relieved from the position they were pinned down in, the SWAT team began ripping off the front door to make entry to try and save anyone that might be alive.
Yeah.
It was Lieutenant O'Donnell from Darby was the commander of the team. Just a phenomenal response, and so brave, because by that time he had set the house on fire. We know now from after the fact that he had set the third floor. He was on the third floor in an elevator position, shooting down. He had set the house on fire, and then we believe he ended his own life. But we didn't know that. There was so much gunfire coming from the house.
I guess, from my perspective, again, as a social worker, as a mental health professional, I know I'm reading a lot. You don't like to be called heroes, because that separates you from, but the bravery, the respect to do that. Are they off? And if it's not appropriate to ask, do the officers, are they back to work? Like, how do you process that kind of trauma in their families and the ripple effects, families being so concerned and everybody, what you've witnessed, whether you were directly involved or, right?
Sure, yeah. So there was an amazing, as you can expect, the law enforcement community is very tight.
Mm-hmm.
The family, all the support mechanisms, the Fraternal Order of Police, the Chiefs Association, every other group that you can possibly think of came in to support the officers themselves. But CISM does stand out. They were there, and they helped.
Would this response have looked the same 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago?
As far as the mental health resources?
Yeah.
I know one thing that would have been the same, without a doubt, and that is the law enforcement community supporting itself.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. The FOP, the Chiefs Association, the other departments and the officers, that would have been exactly as it was. That's never been broken. I'm basically, a student at this point. I'm trying to learn everything I can.
But you're showing up, which is really, we met at a meeting learning about an officer wellness app or different things. So you walking in today, which was great. You're like, I'm really excited to be here and to talk about this topic. Why?
Well, I'll be honest with you. There's several. There's one meeting that I put off for this, and there's a couple this week that I'm technology, different investigative resources and things like that to advance training opportunities. This is first and foremost, without a doubt, because not only from what I saw in the beginning of my career and what we see today, all the incredible advantages of addressing mental health and wellness within first responders. I remember looking back in my career at different incidences, I think as we all do on television, someone with a camera. At first it was the shoulder mounted things, and now it's cell phones, and as we see more and more often, the body cameras from the officers themselves being involved in critical incidents. When you look at the ones where really, objectively poor decisions were made, potentially legal, moral, wrongs that were done. But I mean, the ones where even members of our profession look at the body cameras and say, "Oh, Jesus, what was he thinking? That was just horrible." That was, and again, Monday morning quarterbacking is so easy,
Exactly.
But like even it's so stark.
So what do you do with that? Do you have internally? Are there debriefings or?
Well, that's
conversations.
Yeah, there's definitely procedures now.
Okay.
Potentially exactly with the PLEAC accreditation. There's a duty to intervene. That's policy now. The other officers will not just stand by aimlessly and not willing to speak to a superior or stop a superior or a senior officer. They have a duty to intervene. They must, or they too will be held accountable. So that's nice from a policy and an operational manual. But as I remember throughout my career, my life, just looking at those things in whatever part of the country or service that it might be, I got to think how did that officer, like from a personal, intellectual or inner sense, how did they get to the point where they would do something like that? Was that anger inside? What is it? A lack of compassion? What got them to this point? And I got to think that, man, if we had if that officer was exposed to a wellness program, could they have been a better version of themselves and maybe made a better call?
Wow.
Maybe had more compassion, spend a little bit of more time. And that's kind of one of the principles behind de-escalation. They say, hey, if time's on your side, why not? It doesn't cost anything,
It's amazing. I really appreciate you saying that. Honestly, it sounds cool, but I feel so privileged to be in this work because, like it's like you have a bad day at home. Like life happens and carries over, and there's no luxury to do so. And there's, and like you said, showing up, and then the pressure of you can't really speak up. Or, does that make you weak or vulnerable? Is your job in jeopardy? So I think as we navigate truly this space together.
Sure, yeah. I think the stigma's gone, and again, I hate to sound like I'm carrying a flag here, but I truly mean it. I do believe that collectively the various FOPs and the chiefs associations, the district attorney's office, and all the leadership points really pushed to help through training, through knowledge, education, to change that in the profession throughout the almost 4 decades now that I've been in it. And one of the things that's really coming into play, because I don't know if we were on air when you said it, but you were amazed at some of the types of calls that police get dispatched to.
Blown away.
Yeah. And of course that goes part to the public service and being there to support, where even though we may not be able to provide the service, we certainly know who can, and we can get that arranged for them. And even it comes down to medical calls. A lot of folks are unfamiliar with the fact that every single time, at least in most municipalities, I can't speak for all, but in most municipalities that I'm aware of, if the paramedics or the ambulance is called for just a simple, laceration on your hand, you call 911, say, "Oh, I need an ambulance. Can't stop the bleeding," or whatever it might be, or I'm having chest pains. The first person there is likely not going to be an EMT. It'll be a police officer, and that's to one, we're trained in first aid, advanced first aid. Stop the bleed and various things like that. We have AEDs on us, so we could provide critical care, be the first point of contact for that. That and hey, humanity is what it is. Some people call 911 to report injuries, and they just selectively forget to mention that laceration was caused by your boyfriend and a large steak knife, and he's still on location with the steak knife in his hand. Never mention that to the dispatcher.
That's again just showing up and having no idea what you're walking into.
Yes, we have to make the place safe so that the professional medical professionals can do their job.
Can you think of it like your long career, something you're most proud of?
So from a personal level, really honestly being able to help people that genuinely needed it at a time when there was no one else, and just a few moments of lapsed time may have ended very, very tragically.
Is there a particular incident you can think of? I know you again, don't like being a hero, but when you talk about showing up, and is there a particular call that?
Yeah, there's been a couple that just being there 24/7, particularly in a small town, where you were able to get there and make good things happen. I would love to tell you a wild story about how brave and ingenious, but that's utterly not true. I was just in the absolute right place at the right time. But whatever was needed at that moment, what was needed, I provided. She's still alive. We actually talk once every year. Yeah, she was going to be dead, and I was right there and pulled her out of the way. And we talk once a year. We kind of struck up a conversation. She's a lovely woman, but also intense, immensely private. So I don't want to get too far.
Yeah, not that, but if you say right place, right time, I'm not jumping in front of a gun or a moving vehicle. Do you know? So I think you minimize it. Truly, these are huge events. I think
I wish I could say I'm being humble by minimizing it, but if you were there, it was not anything grand. But there is one concrete fact. Had I not done what I did on that day, she would be dead. There's not a maybe.
That's
or,
amazing.
You really could have. No, she was going to die. And I guess the reason why I mention that is the sense of pride and feeling, particularly as a young guy. I hadn't been married yet. I didn't have any kids yet. Of making that arrest, which again, he just chose the corner that I was posted to, on the perimeter. Could have chose anyone else's. We didn't have portable radios even back then, so there was no way of calling for per se. But that sense was about here to save that woman's. That redefined my purpose of why I was there. I could care less if I ever arrested anyone ever again.
But that was early in your career. And then, kind of part of the conversation, what changes, have you seen in policing, just even from media again? I'm going to have to go deep in the weeds with that. But,
sure.
I think we're around similar age. Just technology has changed so much, with cell phones now and people's, polarizing about police. How have you navigated that from, I know, again, not heroic, but you literally right place, right time, whatever you want to call it, doing good work, no cameras, no technology, to where we are today?
Yeah. Well, I think probably from a historian standpoint, the cameras, obviously the officers at the time didn't like it very much, but I think from a historic standpoint, the cameras were a sea change moment for our profession. So I think that shined a light on our profession collectively across the nation and probably the world too, honestly. The changes were made. They were made, and they were made in record time, and they're still being made. And I think the focus, kind of with the previous line of questioning, was, it's become, enforcement is still there, but the service portion, the compassion.
So, what made you become an officer as a young kid?
Well,
you were a kid.
As a young kid, my father was a firefighter. His whole career is professional firefighter. I became a fire chief, and that's where he wasn't very pressuring, but that's kind of where he wanted me to go.
Police, not fire.
Fire.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he wanted to go to fire, and firemen were always, or policemen were always hanging around with the firemen, and and I don't know, just something impressed upon me, and. Once I got out of high school, I went to the police academy, made the application, and that was that. I don't know, when you're so young, what do you know? I wish there was some great story I could tell you, but no, it was either going to be fireman or policeman.
But so your exposure to first responder world a little bit, you grew up with that.
Oh yeah, lived it every day.
So I would think towards the end of your career, what is, when you think about that, two things, what would be kind of your legacy, or looking back, something that would be a legacy, and then the second part, do you have any thoughts about next chapter? Oh. And I'm assuming you may be retiring soon. Maybe that's not the case, but 37 years.
It's a good topic. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm having so much fun where I'm at. And again, they took me at 19. I say they took me. I applied. Since 19 years old. I didn't know anything at 19 years old. It's probably a good topic for debate that I know anything now. But at 19, you don't know anything. Everything I know, it's the only thing I know. If there's something else out there in the private sector, I'll take a look at it. But
so retirement isn't so imminent. You're at a good place and doing what you like doing.
I've talked with my wife about the number 40. It's kind of round. It's nice. Yeah. It's not too far away. And I wouldn't remove it from as an option, but I don't know. I'm not. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So you still obviously really enjoy what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely, especially in a town like this. Yeah. That's why I always find conversations with big city officers and to see their perspective and how they're jumping from call to call to call to call, and maybe despite their very best efforts, might not be able to provide the same level of service. Not because they're not trained or they don't want to, just they have 10 calls pending, whereas in our town, oh yeah, Mrs. Jones, what's, oh, you make a cup of tea. Oh, I'll be happy to come in and sit down. And, and it's just that you're almost like Barney Fife. So
right on the border of Philly. That's just an interesting, picture. So your legacy is a premature question. You saw plenty of years left to figure out what that might be.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. We'll see. But you did discuss the idea of crisis co-response type style of units. And I'm very encouraged with that because in Delaware County, and that's all that I can speak to. And even then, I can only really speak to locally what we call Sector 4. It's a collection of towns, mainly divided by our 911 center's dispatch. But in East Lansdowne, we had seen, and they're all noble efforts by every means, the issues to address mental health crisis. And until crisis co-response came around, at least for, again, just one man's opinion, and they're run currently by the Owen Institution. And I'd have to say, until they came around, I really had no faith at all in any type of co-response or mental health services being provided to the community. But
they're not department specific. They just support the county, or do you have your own person or a person assigned to your section?
So yeah, no, they're countywide, I believe.
So it's still newer. It's pretty new.
Very new. Yeah.
So they're figuring it out.
Yeah, and Owen's a very prestigious institution that has cared for folks with mental health challenges. I know they're well known for children with Down syndrome and like conditions, and they care for them. And that, I guess the reason I bring it up is because it's one, it's recent, and two, it focuses on the co-response angle, and they really do seem to be effective at what we're not, which is the aftercare. After the person has been, de-escalated, de-armed, or if a weapon was even involved, but basically brought down to the point where they're no longer a threat to themselves or anyone else. Now what? Now what?
Yeah,
because that's
and you don't
not
need
our
them
lane.
calling you again, right? So that's why whoever, if it's Elwyn, if it's Lincoln Center, if there's other organizations doing it, it's to hopefully, mitigate repeat callers, repeat people, intersecting with law enforcement because it's not criminal.
Sure, yeah. And I don't know what, if any, actual services as far as counseling or therapy or things that they provide, but they get you where you need to go. And maybe they do provide too. Right. I don't know. But I do know I was impressed with them.
And I think still finding the way. I'm glad that you found an organization that's getting it, but to the point when we started this conversation, figuring out how is that partnership working, right? Because it's so new. When you said, look back when you were 19, if you probably thought you'd be working with organizations or having this conversation, because, I know my lane, I'm not an officer. I don't carry a weapon. I don't deal with criminals, right? And I have a skill set to offer. So I think I'm just excited about the work and glad that chiefs like you, people are showing up and having conversations. How do we make it work? What...
Oh, absolutely. No, I'll be honest with you, we met at another wellness conference and conversed with you briefly, and I was absolutely, I got to be honest with you, I was inspired by the things you were saying. I wanted to learn more. I'd been pursuing the topic for a while, particularly now that I'm in this position and have the ability to, affect some sort of change, at least in my agency, which is all that I'm responsible for.
So I so appreciate your interest, your time, your, commitment, and still kind of learning and
just a student. Yeah, just a student. That's all that's all I'll ever be. Yeah. And but no, I think meeting professionals like yourself and the Lincoln Center, very impressive. Absolutely. I look forward to a relationship with you and the center, and anything that we can gain to make our officers and our community better. To serve them, because if we're not doing that, what do we exist for?
Yeah. I also am wondering, we talked about body cams. I think you've been instrumental. I read briefly with your department. Is it the AI body cam, or can you talk about that a little bit?
The motivation behind these changes and the AI that I'll describe really kind of was rooted in officer wellness, my own, and watching these younger kids come in, be given a couple uniform shirts, a couple pants, a badge, a gun, and everything else you had to buy, including the holster for the gun, the belt, the bulletproof vest.
You changed that.
It's raining. You better buy yourself a coat. We changed all that. Right now, They have all new uniforms. Everything except their underwear and their boots are provided for them. I don't buy their boots, and I don't buy their underwear. Everything else on their body is provided by us, and it is the best that I can find.
That is absolutely officer wellness from a clinical perspective, like
Oh, yeah.
valuing them,
A sense of
demonstrating it.
value.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that.
Yeah.
I've seen with the morale, the feedback.
Absolutely.
And then also too, there was a lot of other changes made too, which was important because previously training, that which was required by law, even then, that was the only thing that you got. Now these officers, they spend half their time training, half their time on the street. It's an investment in them. It's an investment in our community, in our professionalism, our professional standards, almost to the point where I can't even afford to keep sending them to training. So we've decided to start hosting our own training. And we have Penn State University. We have the PA Department of Education, their Institute for Law Enforcement Education. We have, I believe Drexel University has been in there. We have quite a few professionals coming in, and they're scheduled throughout the year.
I mean, now may not be the time, but we also offer great training.
Oh, I'd love to have
and
you.
the COJ
And this would be
funded.
a great
Yeah,
time.
it is. They're a grant. So
Yeah, and it's, I'd love to have you in,
Yeah.
and it's free training for our officers.
and it's about officer resiliency, wellness. The officers love it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And what is the AI? Is that a camera system?
Sure,
or-
yeah. So AI, that's manifested itself in several ways. The one you mentioned is the AI. So we wear body cameras from the Axon Corporation. They also make the tasers as well. And the new Axon Body 4, we were the first in the region to have it, has probably what I would say, and I've used all of them, Google Translate, all these other services. They do a good job of like a ping pong ball, sending your translation. You speak, you wait, it translates, it speaks. The other person hears it or doesn't hear it. Then they speak, and then it has to translate. And it's kind of a process. It works a lot of time. But with the Axon body camera, it's always on you. It has to be. It's our policy. Once you get it going, it almost immediately translates. It identifies the language, so you don't have to, that they're speaking. If you happen to know it, you can tell it, and it shortens the process. But once you get it going, you can speak in English. Have them speak, or just hold it down, the buttons, and it will analyze their language, tell you what that language is, and immediately begin translating your English to their language, and then their language to English. And it records the whole process the entire time, which is really nice for, review later on, performance standards.
So you're currently
evaluation.
using this?
Oh, we're currently using it, yeah.
How long has that been around? Have you been using it?
Oh, it's been several months now, I believe.
It's still new, though, that it's with less than a year.
Oh,
you
yeah.
rolled it out, yeah.
Yeah, and I think not only the fact that it's on the body cam itself, and two, that it's being recorded, but that it is got to be the most quick and fluent and effective way of communicating with a person who does not speak English. Right now, I believe it does about 50 plus languages. I think their goal is over 100. And it's connected online. It loads everything up to our cloud storage for the body cam footage and the translations. But the idea is that it allows the officer to speak to a victim or a suspect. It could be, a lot of times it's what's left, the victim. And it allows us to maintain eye contact with them, to speak to them as a human, let them know that we're here, even though there's this barrier. And then the device itself, you just see the reaction of the person. They feel like they're speaking to someone of their mother tongue because it's so instant. It's so personal. It just flows.
That's
it's not
amazing.
like you're waiting for this
seems
translator.
like you brought your department way up to this century very quickly with all the changes from.
Oh yeah, so that was one of the big ones. The other one was, without a doubt, the training. But we also embraced responsible AI in another form, and that is through we had community safety cameras installed at all the public intersections. It's basically physically impossible at this point to enter or leave our town by vehicle without being on this camera. And a lot of folks are under the misconception that they're on a public roadway or something that they have some element of privacy. They don't.
Yeah.
Driving a vehicle in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is not a right, it's a privilege. And this has already been addressed by the courts over and over. And already we've been able to solve multiple crimes and respond effectively. Basically what it gives is the officer the ability with the MDT, the computer in their car, to see the cameras prior to their arriving with no skill. And that's kind of the point. Everyone has cameras everywhere, but it takes like literally a video engineer to review it properly after the fact and then pull up and scroll to the left or the right and find the actual thing. And, oh, is that the person? And you zoom in. The AI takes care of all that for you to the point where literally as soon as you receive the 911 call, respond to whatever the intersection is, just touch the touchscreen computer in your car, pull up that intersection and see what's there right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then review it later to see where everybody ran so you can allocate resources to that. And we've been able to apprehend quite a few people like that. So I saw that as, okay, it's technology, it's great, money's great. We don't have a lot of money. It's not a fabulously wealthy community. It's a blue-collar working community. But I was able to secure a grant through the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development that paid for that in its entirety. And I see it as a force multiplier. It allows 1 or 2 officers to become 3 or 4 and see what's there before they get there for their own safety, but also, too, to effectively respond to and apprehend those persons who are suspected of criminal activity, because it's nice to have empathy and concern and professional dedication to service and victims. But there's a few things that are true about this. One, just because you come as a police officer to a scene and see one person lying on the ground covered in blood and snot and one person who is not, does not mean that that person on the ground is actually the victim. They may have just lost.
Yeah.
They may have, created the circumstances that led to that. That's for investigations and courts to figure out later. But as far as the other more prominent, which is to respond to an emergency call, and of course the bad guys very rarely ever hang around to express their side of the story. So time after time, call after call, year after year, decade after decade of responding, and the bad guy's always gone. And boy, it'd be nice to investigate that, but I got a couple calls pending, and the victims are already anticipating the letdown. When you can actually see which way they run and get officers there, you can run fast, but you can't outrun the radio. And you get them there, and that person is scooped up and brought before justice, arraigned properly, thrown into the hands of the judicial branch. And that, too, in my opinion, not to try to lump everything under wellness, but that is a wellness thing where, wow, I'm actually affecting people's lives.
All of it. I really can't thank you enough. I keep learning in this space as well, but this conversation was so comprehensive, I think, and anybody listening, especially as a civilian, to understand everything that goes involved that you don't think about. So you've shed so much light on so many things the average guy that doesn't get in trouble or doesn't know is happening, and keeping the community safe for us. I always say that when you guys are well, when responders are well, I'm well. The community's well, I'm well, and find it really purposeful. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it was just a great conversation. Thank you. And for everything that you're doing and continue to do.
I appreciate it.
And I apologize making the assumption that retirement was close. I don't even know if it'll be in.
You may be right. And I'll take this moment to thank you as the host. And
thank you again, Chief Cadden. Really appreciate it. So it's a privilege, again, honor to work with you and in this space. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
TLC Connections is supported in part by the Lincoln Center for Family and Youth. Through education, counseling, coaching, and consulting, we empower people to make positive choices, meaningful connections, and transformational change. To learn more, visit thelincolncenter.com.